There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. It is Deb and Heather with The Skeptic and the Mystic. We are on episode 43. So today we are going to talk about kind of the collective, what's going on. We don't know where this conversation is necessarily going to go, but we're going to touch on absorbed trapped emotions. And I kind of want to just riff about, how we maybe some strategies for managing how you become affected by the collective energies, because even as people in the healing practices, personally, from my standpoint, it's a struggle for me sometimes. I tend to take on other people's things. I feel a lot, and that is sometimes a challenge for me to protect my own energy when there's just craziness in every direction going on in the world right now for obvious reasons. We all are feeling it. I think even beyond what is obvious, there's a lot going on energetically with like planets are retrograde and whatever your belief systems with all of that, wherever you lie with it, I feel like it's pretty undeniable that there's been chaos coming at us from every direction, and every person that I know is experiencing some level of emotional turmoil and even physical. Mine is starting to show up as physical pain, which is unusual for me. So I want to talk about what we do.
Yeah. I mean, it's so necessary to talk about in the like for anybody that's in the healing world, especially, but then also just in general, because there are people out there who are empaths, and empaths are people who can feel other people's energy. And there's different levels of empath, but some people can like literally feel in their body where somebody else's pain is. Like, like if I don't have this, thankfully, but like certain empaths, I could be with you and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling a pain in my right shoulder, and that's where your pain is, right? Like some people feel it in that way. Other people will, be able to just feel emotionally what's going on for somebody else.
And I think I have little levels of both of those, and I have since I was a kid. And not having the knowledge or the language to understand that it's confusing, because if you don't know, then you don't know that that's not even yours.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not something that's taught in schools at all, right? I mean, emotional intelligence is not taught in schools, let alone like, oh, what's an empath? So if somebody is an empath, they're going to take on the feelings of other people until they can understand, right, that is something that they do. Right? And then it is, like you said, like what do you do with it, and how do you not absorb, any of everybody else's stuff? And I'm not going to say that I have like mastered this completely. I will say that I had the great gift of working. My first job out of grad school was working as a therapist at a group home, which I've talked about before. Well, that job, every single day I came home and I went in my room, and this was when, gosh, I forget the name of the show. It was with Ty Pennington, I think it was, they did those home makeovers.
Yes.
Yeah. That what it was called, maybe even.
I think so.
Yeah. But when like that was starting to get really big, I remember I just come home and I would turn on the TV and just watch episodes and episodes, of that. And this is before we had DVRs and all that kind of stuff, so I'm just watching whatever. And I just lights out, pillows up blankets up as high as it can. And my roommates would come in and I'd be like, leave me alone. Like, because I had nothing left to give, because my energy was just sucked out of me all day long from, working at the group home. And so through that experience, I learned that a couple of different things. One, that if I'm working harder for somebody to get better than they are, then like they're never going to get better. And that's what I was always doing, was I was always working so hard and wanted them to get better, and realized that I am taking away from them their healing journey. And I was actually being really selfish. Really selfish, because I thought that it was all about me instead of letting them go through their journey. And once I could grasp that and let them have the journey that they're on, and I could be a witness, but it didn't mean that I had to jump down in the well with them and sit there with it, but I could say, hey, here's a rope, let's pull you out. But if they didn't, pull on, like get onto the rope and start climbing, I would be like, I'm just going to come down there and I'm going to push you up. And, da, da, da. And meanwhile, they're just sitting there like, okay, push me up, like, but once I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I can drop the rope, but you got to do some work here. And if they didn't, to be like, do you want to stay in this well? And sometimes they'd say yes, like really admit, like, no, I really don't want help. And then be like, oh, okay, you don't want help. I want you to get help, but you don't actually want help. Why am I spending my time on doing this?
Right.
That was such a huge, like huge aha. And I'm not saying that I can all the time now do that, because sometimes I'll see people and I'm like, girl, let me help you. But I'm like, they don't want the help. And it's so freeing, Deb. It's so freeing when you can just say, like you just ask, do you want the help? Instead of like trying to help and they don't want it. And that's where a lot of people, I feel like, get drained, in the helping world.
Yeah. It's interesting.
There's also just like taking on, like, there are people who can walk into a room and they're like, they can feel all of the energy in the room and just totally absorb this, right?
I feel like that's more my experience, is I can sometimes feel that. I mean, now I can tell if it's such a shift when I walk in a room, it's not mine, and then I can choose to either see if I can shift the energy in the room with my presence or simply not engage, because I guess it's also, I can tell, if they're obviously in a negative mood, like say it's a coworker. I would say if I walk into the office and like you can just tell someone's like, I can just decide I'm not here for that today. I'm not doing it. When I guess I sometimes do get sucked into it though. I think if I'm already feeling a little weak on my own, then I can get sucked into that.
Okay, so and that right there is like one of the biggest things to look at is like, well, when we think about, like, you started this at the beginning, like collective energy, right? We have all this stuff going on in the world today, and we can look at it in a couple of different ways, and it all depends on what your model of the world and of whether or not what's going on is good or bad or right or wrong or any of those things, right? I was listening to a podcast today, and they were talking about how this is the great awakening. Like, people are starting to wake up and realize, wait a minute, there's been a lot of crappy things going on, and like we need to shift and change. And they were talking about it as an exciting time where, for the past whatever bit, I've just been like, I don't want to be here. Like, the world is so horrible.
I feel it in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be an eternal optimist, and I live in the world of magical thinking and rainbows and unicorns. So like, I want to think it's a great awakening. But in this particular moment, it's overwhelming to be in the midst of.
Yes.
And I have sometimes those moments of, I didn't sign up for this, even though I actually know my soul did in my belief system. Yeah. Yes, I did. But sometimes in my human brain, no, I didn't.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where, like, and people talk about this and it seems like so cliche, but this is where self-care comes in, like, so big, because and I know I talk about this so much, but because I just love the framework to be able to identify, is looking at our 5 bodies and saying, okay, what puts me at the most vulnerable state? Like, what are the things that I do that make me more vulnerable to other people's energies and to take on other people's energies, right? And so asking physically, have I gotten enough sleep? Am I eating foods that have nutrients in them versus packaged foods that drain me and rob me of my energy? Because you cannot help other people if your body is not physically in a good place to be able to serve other people. And so one of the things that I see in the healing world, a lot of empaths, is people who tend to be, not all, okay, but I have seen people in the healing world that tend to be heavier and carry around a lot of extra weight. And for majority of them, that weight is a protection, right? It's a barrier between them and the world. And I get it, right? And it's not the healthiest for one's body, right?
Mhm.
And there's a belief too. So with that, we got our physical body, but then we have our mental body, which is the belief that like I need, a barrier to protect me, right? Instead of I am protected. I am. Just period.
Mhm.
Like I don't need to. Here, I guess on the Mac. Like I don't need, to put this barrier of fat tissue around me because I am already divinely protected.
Yes, I would. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I definitely I have my mantras. I think we've talked before about mantras. I believe in them. I do feel like they work for me. That is one that I use. I'm protected. I'm supported. The other one that, as I've started to recognize, that sometimes in doing energy work, I think we started talking about this before we started recording, but if I'm not very, very diligent about closing a session with someone and really making sure that I, disconnect and then, take care of myself, I sometimes will take on the physical pain, or, you know what I mean? Like I can still feel what I was trying to help them with. So, um, I have now started, even I do this kind of almost every night as I'm falling asleep. I have like a bunch of things that I kind of just say and do, to kind of
Mhm.
settle into a good sleep. But one of them would be, I release you back to you and I call me back to me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So that is just, so whatever I took on from anyone, and the you is just a collective. Sometimes it's a specific person. If I've had an interaction with someone that I know I need to direct that specifically toward.
Mhm.
But if not, it's kind of just to the everybody you, right? Like I release you back to you. So anything I took on, even if it's something from an interaction at the grocery store, I don't know that we always acknowledge how much even the tiniest interaction with another human being leaves a little imprint on us, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's one of my evening practices.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and so that's like one of the in the mental, I would say that's mental, emotional, energetic, like spiritual, practice of saying that. Um, Another one, when you look at the again, this kind of not kind of this does fit all different categories, is literally notice like imagining that you have a bubble around you,
Mm-hmm.
and you can literally just like imagine a zipper from down at your feet coming all the way up, and just in your mind's eye pull that zipper all the way up, right, to say like I'm putting my putting my protection around me, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going into my bubble. Dr. Nelson, who started the body code, which is the energy work that we do, like he talks about getting up each day and just saying, okay, shields up,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And
And you can do it in the shower. If if you're an evening shower, morning shower, it kind of works both ways, but just kind of the cleanse, let it cleanse you, like visualize like a white light's coming out of the shower head, or raining down from above, and kind of cleansing all of that energetic gunk, right? Like I know to a lot of people they're probably like, whatever, that seems crazy because you're really just visualizing it, but there's energy in those thoughts, and I think the intention is so powerful to just acknowledge. Like for me, it's really an acknowledgement, and then reminding myself that, yeah, you are divinely supported, that I have the ability to choose, what I allow into my own energy.
mhm,
And I have to be diligent about it, because if I don't, then I do tend to take on a lot that isn't mine.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, and oh gosh, I don't know. I like to think that I have, gotten way better about it than I have in the past, because I've just gotten better about letting people be on their own journeys. And it's like,
mhm,
okay, if you want to struggle and suffer, that's your choice. And the most loving thing that I can do is to let them have their choice.
mhm,
We live in an age right now where people don't have to let other people have their choices, and will say that what you do affects me. And you need to do whatever because that'll affect me. And the thing is, It does. Every single choice that we make impacts somebody else. And I'm speaking in probably different ways than most people think.
Mm-hmm.
But what I eat, I was talking to my friends about this earlier today. I'm like, I really believe I don't have kids to have to be concerned about as far as what's going on in the world today. I'm not have those hard choices. And I acknowledge that, but I was like, I also know that what I eat does impact my friends' kids and the kids down the street that I don't even know, and 7 generations down the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if I don't ever have kids, because everything is just energy, and it's all just impacting that energy. And so I have to, when I think about not absorbing the collective energy, and I've been really sucky at this lately, is like literally just putting myself into that bubble and saying like, I have this shield of protection around me, and I'm going to do everything I can to take care of my physical body, which is my temple, right? My emotional body, my energetic body. I had to do everything I can to make myself be at the highest and best vibration that I possibly can be, which means being careful about what I put into my mouth, what I put into my ears, right? What I put into my vagina, like all of the anywhere that I could put something in, even my skin, like anything
Yeah.
like that comes into my body, I have to be careful of and mindful of. And same thing like in my mind. What am I listening to? I don't know about you. I don't listen to music very much anymore. And I was at Pilates the other day, and they were playing this, and they're like, "Oh, this is like pop, top pop chart," and I was like, "I don't know any of this stuff," and I'm like, and I'm so glad that I don't, because this is crap. Like this stuff is such crap.
Yeah, I don't listen to like the radio really. I love music because I do think music is powerful, but
Mhm.
I love that now we have tools like Spotify where I can just curate things and only hear, the kind of music I want to hear. Unless, my kid, obviously, like once in a while, she'll want to like play today's top hits. And I'm always like, it's today's crap. It
Yeah,
really is. Like, it's not, I mean, I sound like an old curmudgeon. I'm like, that's music. But
right.
I mean, I think, I mean, I've heard this from a lot of different places, so I can probably even quote the book, but some spiritual, somebody that really to the point where like he would recommend like never listening to any popular music. I mean, my feeling on that is kind of the same thing as Shields Up. Like you're going to go in the grocery store, you're going to hear the crap pop music, you're going to hear it at the gas station when it's like that stupid gas station TV pops up while you know what I mean? Like there's stuff that's going to come in. I choose not to live in a world like in such a state of like needing to, I don't know, police I don't know. I guess that kind of goes with theme. I don't want to police anything. Like, do you? I also know I have the power to tune that out or not let that get to me.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
And here's the thing: is at the end of the day, like we do have that power, and it's natural that we are just going to absorb stuff like without you even realizing. So then the question is, what do you do at that point?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be different for different people, right? For me, that's why like doing ayahuasca on a quarterly basis for me was such a big thing for a few years, because I felt like it was my way of just doing this deep cleanse and
Mm-hmm.
purging anything that I absorbed from anybody that I worked on, like energetically. And
Mm-hmm.
there were times, and I've told you this, there were so many times where I would be purging, like literally physically purging, and I'm like, oh, that's this client stuff, that's this person's stuff, like stuff would just like come out of me. And I think for me personally, doing that work has helped me exponentially to not take on more stuff. Like I had to get rid of all this stuff, like to now it's like there's so much more. And I don't mean to say this in like a cocky way. It's like my vessel is so much cleaner, so there's the energy is just going to move through. But before, when I was so gunked up with stuff, like anytime you have an energy, like it's going to do everything it can to pull that similar energy towards it, and then it would just like a beaver pulling sticks to the dam. It's just like, oh, I gotta get another stick, I gotta get another stick. Like it would just keep doing that, and then I would be like, like just not feeling myself. Well, I wasn't myself because I was taking on everybody else's energy. And so once I did all this like deep dive work with ayahuasca, it's like I got to the point where in my ceremonies, I'm like, I'm not, I don't need to take on anybody else's stuff. Like, I'm not here to do anybody else's work. I'm here to do my work.
That's interesting because, I mean, we've talked about ayahuasca several times. I've never experienced it. I still don't know that it's something I want to. But that just gave me a little light bulb moment in that I have typically had a practice of 1 day a week, basically doing a fasting, essentially, not always like a pure fast, but I have not been doing that in the last month, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. It's perhaps, I mean, just because I have been feeling quite unsettled, so it's probably not the time to not be doing that. I just kind of I experiment with things with myself all the time. Like, do I really need that? Like, I want to know that whatever I'm doing for myself, like, I don't want to just pick something because I saw some research and then just stick to it indefinitely. Like, I'm always willing to be like, I'm going to test this, so I'm going to not do it for a little while, see, do I feel better, worse? I don't know necessarily that it was an intentional decision to not do it, but I think I could benefit from a day of fasting because I never really thought about it as a, like, more I was thinking about it from just a physical, like, I think it's beneficial for the body. Again, the research goes back and forth, so I'm always like, I don't know. But as a spiritual, energetic, like a cleansing in that sense, I feel like it could be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It gives your body a chance to break and to, like, not have to process so much.
Yeah. I mean, I do have also in my, like, nightly mantras and stuff, is kind of just, I allow my body to release anything it doesn't need. Like, just anything. I don't care if it's talking about, digestive things or emotional or, like, I just try to remind myself my body is willing to release anything it doesn't need. Right now I'm clearly holding on to some things because I'm experiencing a lot of different signs of that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we talked about before, it's like, when things happen that aren't in alignment, with who we want to be and with our highest and best, then it makes it a little bit stickier and a little bit harder to, to release stuff. And so you're working through some of that now, and that's the process, like when we,
yeah, it often manifests for me in some sort of, and then it's so rare. Like, it's almost like I have to get to the tipping point is pretty high. I have a high tolerance for it, and my practices normally keep me in check. But yeah, if I start to get pretty far out of alignment, it's physical pain, which is exactly where I'm at right now. Like, it's physical pain to the point where I have to take a break. I have to take a break from physical activity, from too much. Like, I notoriously do too much or, it seems like too much. And then my body will be like, okay, well, we've been trying to gently warn you, so now we're going to really kind of incapacitate you.
Right. Yeah. And then you're more susceptible to take on other people's stuff. Okay. And fatigue is a really big thing, that a lot of people don't pay attention to. And it's something that it depends on what circles you're in, but there are some circles where, like, I know when I worked for Tony Robbins, it was always like, oh, well, like, coach all the time. Like, you can sleep when you're dead. And I'm like, with a health background, I'm like, how is that even, like, why would we even think that at all?
Yeah, I don't know if that's just the circles I'm in. I see a huge shift in that narrative now. Huge.
Yeah.
Like, people are really starting to embrace the idea that recovery as it pertains to rest and sleep in particular is critical. If you want to be your best, you cannot neglect that piece.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I do think it's changing. I think that whole like, sleep when you're dead, kind of thing is changing. But
yeah, we're starting, I don't know, I'm starting to look at those people like, you're really kind of missing a key element there.
Yeah, I've been looking at them like that my whole life because I was always like, even in college, I pulled all-nighters, but not to study. I will say that.
I mean, I did to study for sure. I definitely would fall victim to, like, oh, I don't, sleep's like Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've certainly subscribed to that at times, but I think these days, like, and you know what else is interesting? I'll be super curious to see, in the next several years, just because we talked about there's a huge shift, like regardless of where you stand on any of these issues, there is a huge shift going on. That is inarguable, right? Where it will shift toward or end or land, we all have our different belief systems. But what I'm noticing, again, at least within the circles I run with, is we're really starting to recognize how much the go, 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 action, action, produce more kind of, it's more a masculine energy, how detrimental that can be for us. And now I see a lot more conversations about the slowing down and working with your own rhythms and that sort of stuff. I'll be curious to see where that pendulum swings to, because like I was even just opened a newsletter that had like these like wellness jobs or whatever. And I was just curious. I was clicking through some of the different job postings, and I was still noticing some, even within a wellness-based company, that were like, this fast-paced environment, like blah, blah, blah. Like they're always talking about, like, that's veiled language to me for,
Right.
we're going to work you to your bone, to the bone, like, can you thrive in a fast-paced environment? Like, when are we going to start rewarding? How about you just honor what you're good at and be good at moving slowly and do quality stuff? Like this is, I think, just in working with a lot of international cultures, it's a bit more of an American, and I think sometimes a German mentality to like push, 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 do, we must do more. Whereas there's other cultures that are like, yeah, we do what we do, and we also enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, and going back to the whole like empath taking on other people's energy, part of that, like when we're go, 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 do, I think a lot of it is people don't know how to feel what they're feeling. And so whether they are like acting as a workaholic, or an alcoholic, or, addicted to drugs, a lot of times people who are empaths typically go down that extreme because they don't know how to handle all of the feelings that they're feeling.
It's an avoidance strategy, I think.
Well, and I don't even know if it's avoidant or like I don't know what to do with all of this. So I need to just like I need to not feel all of it. So it is an avoidant, but not in a like a intentionally bad way. It's just like it's not like they're intentionally avoiding it. It's like I don't know how to work with this.
Yeah.
And so it's so overwhelming that it's like, let me just check out, of this, this plane like that I'm in and go off somewhere else because it's so overwhelming to feel all these feelings.
Yeah.
And eventually it always catches up. And so that's where instead going back to like making sure that if the world feels too much, and I feel like right now I just need to be standing in the mirror saying this to myself, right?
Yeah.
Feels like too much, which it does, right? It's like, okay, how's my sleep? What am I doing with my physical body? Like I know all the times for me, I've said this 1,000 times, when I'm really at the brink of it gets suicidal thoughts. It's always like, what have I eaten lately? Like, what's my sugar intake been? Right. And don't make any decisions until you're in a happy mood. Like,
Yeah.
But how's my physical body? Like, what are my thoughts? What's going on in my thought process? What thoughts maybe need to be examined? Which is all of them, pretty much.
Yes.
Emotionally, like what's going on with my emotions? And for me, all of it feeds through the physical. Like if my physical is effed up, then my emotional body, my mental body is all going to be, taken on. And then like same thing energetically and spiritually, it's like, wait, what do I need to connect with? And if I'm in that place where everything, like the collective energy just feels so much, it's like sometimes I just got to go out in nature and just go stand in the woods.
Nature's hugely grounding. I would say that's almost always, it is never a bad remedy. It's always a good answer.
Right.
I can't think of a time when I would say, don't go to nature. That's not going to be helpful to you.
Right.
Yeah. So there's like a ton of things you just hit on that I was like, oh my gosh, so many things. One being, okay, so you were saying like, your first point is the physical body.
Yeah.
I don't think that is, like, for me, sometimes it's kind of chicken egg. Like, it's very difficult when I'm in that spiral, because I was in a rough downward spiral last week. Um, and then it's kind of like, I know logically I wasn't getting the amount of movement I'm used to because I was dealing with some physical pain, but I need to rest my body to honor the physical pain rather than the push through. But that's affecting my mood, which is affecting my sleep, which is, you know what I mean? Like, and then it's hard to know which one can I fix right now, because they're all so intertwined that they're all fucking each other up.
Right.
So
Right.
it is kind of, you just have to take the small steps. And I think the biggest thing for me, what really kind of, I mean, I feel like not a total 180 where I was last week, but I feel significantly better. And what I had to do, which is hard for me, was cancel a couple of plans, say no to some things, and then honor. I made a commitment to myself on Saturday. I had already signed up for a yoga workshop weeks before. So I was like, I'm going to do that, but I will literally do nothing else. And I went to sleep relatively early on Friday night, and I slept for 12 hours, which I never, ever do. And like, I normally would be up at like 6 a.m. even on a weekend, because that's still sleeping in compared to my normal weekday. But I woke up and I was like, nope, just stay in bed. And I fell back asleep for like 3 more hours. And I'm like, okay. And that was the reset I needed. And then I was able to, you know, make better food choices than I had been making, get some gentle movement, and it kind of then helps you kind of, get back to normal. The other thing you said that I think is so key is being able to recognize when you're out of alignment or in that spiral state or whatever you want to call it, and not making decisions, not making especially big life decisions, and being very careful with how you approach your relationships, because your interactions with other people are going to be very influenced by your state. Your interpretations of things they say and do are probably not going to be accurate. So I think that those are really key points, is like recognizing when you're not the you want to be, and giving yourself a pause from anything that could have a consequence,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, it's a lot of work to be human. And it's even more work when you're somebody who can feel like the energy of what's going on anytime, whether, this time in history, because we are in a time in history, right? Or, any other time. Like if you're one who feels it, it's exponentially harder, and you have to be exponentially more diligent about how you take care of yourself. Okay? Because if this vessel that you're in, okay, is like, if it has the energetic frequency internally of suffering and struggle and like shame and guilt and frustration, right? If that's the internal energy, it's going to just kind of like, there's like when you see magnets and like those like little pieces, like particles coming to it,
You're bringing more to you. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly what it is. And so,
Yep.
get a routine.
So hard, because last week for sure was probably one of the most difficult weeks I've had in a long time. And even with so much awareness and so many tools in my toolbox, I would start every day with, okay, I know that I need to sit down and be intentional about who I want to be and how I want to approach this day. I know I need to do some meditation. I know, like, all the things that really help me on any typical day. It's my typical morning routine, but I had to be extra diligent about it. And even then, every single day last week, I ended up in a ball of tears before noon.
Yeah. And, you had an extenuating circumstance, you had something literally come into you that,
Right.
that is going to make life harder. And
Yeah.
we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times we don't, talking about taking on energy of stuff, like we don't give as much credit, like to the energy that we are taking on of something, no matter what it is, like whether it's something you've eaten or, or the energy of something that you put in your body. Like a lot of times we just like, oh, whatever, it's no big deal, right? But if it's something that comes into your body that is foreign to your body needs time to adjust to it,
Mm-hmm.
period. Sometimes it adjusts fine, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it, causes this like, oh, like things are not good. And that's, a lot of what you're experiencing. And so to think like, oh, I should be fine. No. No.
Well, our shoulds are always
Right.
Should is one of the worst words we can say to ourselves.
Exactly.
But we all do it. We all do it. So, right? Like there's still always that balance of, like I said, it was a rough week and there were things that like I kept trying to reset and kept failing, quote unquote. And then having the compassion and the grace for yourself to be like, okay, and we'll try again.
And that's like the big difference was we can be having the same conversation about, body love or, anything. I look at my body right now and it's not what I want it to be. And I could sit there and be like, oh, it should. It'd be like, it's not. My hormones are off. I got to get that fixed, period. Right? Mm-hmm. Instead of, I should look different. I should, and it's like grace and compassion for where we are is a big thing. And so when you're feeling all of those energies, collective energies about like stuff, it just, Deb, I know this, like acknowledge, like, this is what I'm feeling right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to let it be there. And it's okay. Mm-hmm. Period. Because being human is about feeling all of the feelings. Right now, We're feeling a lot more feelings, right? Than normal. And that's just still a job. I just need to feel the feelings.
Yeah. Right.
Period.
Which is a practice in itself. It really is, because it isn't fun to, I definitely got to some places where the thoughts were a little dark and scary. And I'm like, this is not normal for me. It's not where I like to be, but to allow yourself to experience it is such a challenge, but also it is kind of like what we came here for, which sounds so like logically no one would be like, I didn't come here to experience pain. But you also kind of did.
But is it pain here? And that's the interesting thing. Like, I love, and I talked to you about that book, Existential Kink, which I love, right? Oh my gosh. Have you listened to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I love, like, it talks about how there's different things, like anything can be pleasure or pain. People think about people who do like BDSM stuff, it's like, mm-hmm. Oh, you're choking me. This feels so great. Where somebody's like, choking me, this feels terrible. And I love the idea of like birthing, where she talks about, there's like a thing of orgasmic birthing, and that people have been told the birthing has to be horrible and painful. I have a friend who just had a baby a couple weeks ago, and she did a hypnobirth for both of her kids, and it was like she didn't have horrible birthing experiences, right? Mm-hmm. Because she believed that it didn't have to be a horrible experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and even that like thought of like, we're gonna struggle and suffer. Well, what if it's like we're just gonna come here to learn lessons?
Yeah.
And that, so I just want to be clear, just so that we definitely touch on it. It's like, as we put in the title of like what is it, an absorbed energy, right? And how do they impact us? But the what is like when somebody feels an emotion and they don't fully feel it, it gets stuck inside of them. And that energetic ball, it could be as big as a grapefruit. It could be a little tiny thing or a big thing. And if a person, is feeling that and they are around, then they're feeling it really strong. And then somebody who's an empath comes alongside of them, just in their world, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can feel their thing. And they take it on as their own. That's what an absorbed energy is. And so when I just totally blanked. My mind just totally blanked. Oh man.
That's okay.
But when we absorb it, right, then we're just saying like, this is mine, instead of just saying, oh, that was, like, oh, Deb was feeling that. Like, I'm going to let her keep that.
We're taking it on and we're carrying it around.
Right.
And I think, when I've done sessions, like, I would assume, I don't know if you do or not. Like, sometimes when I find absorbed, trapped emotions, I will kind of ask, absorbed what? From your parents, from a friend, from a community group, from the collective. So they can be absorbed like directly from a partner or someone, because there's also, what's the term, the like shared trapped emotions, because you can kind of, have ones that are yours and someone else's that you both are carrying, or it can be just theirs that you've kind of taken on.
Right.
And it may be from, a direct relationship, or it may not be. It may just be that it came from, your workspace or your church group or your, like whatever community you're part of. And I just think right now the collective energy is so heavy. So there's so much in it that I think we're all, I would hypothesize that we're all experiencing some level of the absorbed, trapped emotions,
Yeah. Yeah. And ironically, I'm going to say this as we're like doing this on social media, right? It's like, that's one of the biggest things, like, for so many people, like where it's so overwhelming, is when you just read all this stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, like,
right.
And sometimes it's just getting off of that, protecting.
Be very aware of, how you're approaching social media. I mean, that's a whole topic within itself. That's something I think I've gotten pretty good. I just don't put much weight on it. Like we were joking, I had no clue that Instagram and Facebook were down all day. I literally didn't know. So like, it's okay. I think that to me was a little like, okay, I guess I don't have like a social media addiction. Didn't realize that was even happening. So it's all good.
You're all good.
Yeah.
So, okay. So just to like wrap this up and take this home, like, the more susceptible you are, meaning like the more vulnerable, like if you're lacking in sleep, if your body's not filled with proper nutrients, like if you've been listening to things that have a negative energy over and over and over again, if you're putting things inside of your body that are foreign, if you are around people that have really like low, like negative, like low energy, like that's going to allow you to be susceptible to taking on other people's energy that you don't even realize.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be, I love this word, like to be your own sovereign being, right? To like have agency over your body, which is a hard thing these days, right? But to have agency over the body and the choices that you make and the thoughts that you think, that will allow you to be in a place where you're much, much less likely, is that the right term? But you're less likely to take on other people's energy. And just know that part of being in the world is you're going to take on energy. And it's okay. Like, to not make yourself bad or wrong. It's like, oh, okay, that's just somebody else's stuff. And sometimes it can be as simple as you're like, I'm just going to brush it off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think come up with a few, test some things and then come up with your own little, I don't know why toolkit keeps coming to mind. I kind of hate that term, but like your own little system of like what works for you. Because some of the things we suggested, maybe that doesn't work for you. Maybe you have some other way of doing it, So
yeah,
just, don't try to drown it in alcohol. That's probably not going to work, but
no, not probably. That's not.
I think that tends to be a lot of people's go-to.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would not encourage that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up. Have some fun exploring what are some good practices for yourself, whether it's like, imagining yourself putting yourself up into a bubble, or just saying, I'm just gonna release these and like literally wipe it off of you. Like Deb said, take a shower, like adopt one of her mantras at night. Right? And know when you get stuck in this whirl, like Deb was talking about that she did last time, like, that's just part of being human, and don't make yourself bad or wrong for doing it. It just is. The sooner that you can accept it, acknowledge it, accept it, and allow it, the faster you can get out of the spiral.
Yes. And if we can help, call us.
Yes. And sometimes you do need somebody to come along and help release, some absorbed trapped emotions, or, stuff that you absorbed. I have this client, I'll wrap up this. He's got a lot of digestive issues. And the other day it came up, I have to go back to our notes, but it came up that he had an entity in his colon. And he was like, I've been carrying that thing around for years, and he's like, that I feel so much better now that is no longer there. So
Right.
sometimes you just need somebody else to come along and identify it and say, oh, we're going to let go of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it helps to have support in any of that, especially when it does feel like it's a little bit outside of your control.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, until next time, we will see you all later. Have a great day, night, whenever you're listening to this.
Yeah. All right. Bye.